Hi, I want to make a video on something that I have in my notes that I don't quite understand, but I'll just go off the cuff, I guess. So it's having distractions and having to find something distracting enough to have to worry about it. So I guess it comes down to distractions, how we're distracting ourselves. Yeah, we're distracting ourselves. Obviously, we have to find a distraction to make ourselves obviously get through some things. Obviously, people have all sorts of distractions, vices, like drinking alcohol or smoking a cigarette, something that you're only doing to satisfy a desire you didn't have to begin with, and you're only satisfying it to get back to your zero, feeling like I do now. If I didn't smoke cigarette, I don't smoke cigarettes, but if I did, obviously that would be the case. So yeah, it's just addiction that's driving us to satisfy, and that's obviously the life game is addiction. So yeah, have something distracting enough to have to worry about it. Um, yeah, so we have to find distractions, and that's okay. Yeah, so that distraction then becomes something that we have to worry about. So we have a distraction to eliminate, say, something that's painful, but then we have to get so invested in the distraction that we have to find that, and we have to deal with that distraction that we're doing to avoid the previous thing that we're trying to avoid. Um, so yeah, obviously that's something that's obviously consideration. Yeah, I mean, you get caught up in distraction long enough, that becomes a problem itself. Then you might want, like almost like an endless regressive chain of distractions. What does that mean, right? Um, so having distractions. I mean, obviously we all have distractions. For example, you have a distraction, you have a vice, something like drinking alcohol, right? Then you drink the alcohol and that becomes a distraction. But then that becomes a problem itself. It becomes a physical problem. But sometimes it's about weighing the distractions. And sometimes it's like, I'd rather feel something than feel nothing at all. Even though you're feeling something when you're feeling nothing, because if you were not feeling nothing, then you wouldn't give a fuck. Because you're obviously feeling nothing. Like being bored is worse than having a nail shoved in your foot, or being bored is worse than feeling severe depression or something. Whatever it may be, because depression is usually boredom, blah, 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 to a certain extent. But, along those same lines, would you rather be this feeling and being complacent than being complacent and bored? You'd rather be doing something that you don't like than doing nothing at all, just sitting around doing nothing. I mean, to a certain extent, these can be applied. It's about making distractions and getting distracted about that. And that distraction becomes something you have to worry about in and of itself, because you have to be caught up in the distraction to realize that you're avoiding something else, or like you're only going to know you forgot something once you remember it again. I mean, you're only going to know that distraction you're being distracted once you realize what you're distracting again. And that's you got to get something to give some, or whatever it is, the analogy. You gotta give up something, but then you take something else. You take something, you gotta give up something else. And you're not going to know you're avoiding something so truly horrible until it happens, or it dawns upon you, or you remember something. You don't realize just how good you had it until something horrible happens, and the good was just, okay, I was doing fine, now I'm doing horrible. And you may not have been doing too swell, but you were doing better than you were now. And that I don't believe in that application of words and semantics about how all of a sudden you didn't realize how good you had it. You had it bad, now you have it worse. I mean, really, along those same lines, you didn't have it. You had it worse now, but you still had it bad to begin with. Why? Because relatively speaking, you have it worse now than you did before, and it's not because you had it so good before. It's because it's just gotten so much worse. So applying it, oh, you don't realize how good you had it, even though you had fucking, your 20 nails in your feet and arms and stuff, or whatever, using that as an example of pain and suffering, a redundant example of pain and suffering. I mean, obviously doesn't mean that you weren't in pain to begin with. You were in pain to begin with, and now you're in pain, more pain. Now you have 50 nails. You didn't realize how good you had it when you had 20 nails. Now you have 50 nails. How do you like it now? I mean, that's a very sadistic way of looking at it, because you're just reinforcing the mechanism at work. You don't realize how good you had it, so let's make it worse for you to let you realize how good you had it. Well, how about this? We don't realize how bad, how good we have it, or how good we have it, by not making it any worse. Let's just keep it the same. Like I said, it's about doing this as opposed to this. Let's maintain it like right here as opposed to right here, or whatever it may be. Even right here, there's a bigger difference, but let's keep it like right here. And let's not go as bad. I mean, that's a way. If that's a good way to live life, philosophically speaking, to prevent you from taking any unnecessary risks. Let's live life a little right there. Sometimes risks can be worth it, but then again, it's the risk itself, and obviously it's still a risk by its very definition. Every single instance is a risk when it comes to sentient beings applying that to psychology. certain risks, obviously. I mean, everything's a risk to a certain extent. And the fact that it's a risk doesn't mean it can't or can be worth it. It just means that it's a risk and there's still a chance that it could go wrong. That's the definition of a risk. It's the definition of a risk isn't if it's worth or not worth taking. A risk is going to happen every circumstance we do it, and obviously you can understand based on the probability and possibility that risks are worth taking or not. But it's about the fact that it's a risk to begin with, and every single thing is a risk to begin with, and that's by very definition. The risk isn't predicated upon worth or not worth it. That's like a verb. That's like an adjective or something along the lines of a verb or an adverb. It's like an adverb to a verb. Adding along to the very risky as opposed to just risky. It's a risk, and that's the idea to begin with. It doesn't matter how risky the risk is, it's a risk, and the risk by its very definition is taking a chance. And saying how risky it is along the lines is just adding an adverb or adjective to the verb or the adverb or whatever the syntax is or the grammar, obviously. Y-O-U, apostrophe R-E, Y-O-U-R. Yeah. So anyway, really, that's really all it is. Really, distractions. Don't have to worry about it, and you get caught up in the distractions. So yeah, that's it. I don't want to make this a long video, but it's gonna be a very long video, but the video is gonna end now. So yeah, if I have anything else to add on the subject, I can always add it later. So thank you until next time. Bye.